And with that, let's go to the third out, and let's talk about some of this stuff. So I have my predictions, my preseason predictions, and I have your preseason predictions, my friend. And needless to say, there's some stuff that we got right, and there's some stuff that we got wrong. One of the things that I think I did get right is, and I shouldn't say that I got it right, but I did predict the Yankees to be the number 1 seed in the American League, and they look like they could hit that title. They look like they could. So here's what I had. So I had the Yankees at 1, the Astros 2, Twins 3, the Texas Rangers 4, the Orioles 5, and the Mariners 6. I think my only real big miss is Texas. Texas really doesn't look like a playoff team at this point, or I mean, they could fight for a wild card spot, but really not much going on there. And then in the National League, it's Braves, Dodgers, Cubs, Phillies, Diamondbacks, Padres for me in the National League. So again, I think, I don't know that I have like a big miss there. I mean, you consider the Diamondbacks a miss at this point? Like, I don't know.
I mean, so we talked last time about the National League wild card race, right? Like,
Yeah.
The only teams you could have put in a wild card spot in the National League and say like, "Oh, I was wrong," are Miami and Colorado, right?
Right.
So like outside of those two teams, and the fact that like the Dodgers are going to win the NL West,
yeah.
Outside of that, I don't think we really know anything yet. And you'll notice that I did not mention the Phillies winning the National League East. I think that division is still up for grabs. Like, Atlanta's pitching staff is really good. They have a lot of games with Philly left. And Philly has already run through the easy part of their schedule. So I'm not saying that I still think Atlanta's going to win, but I think that division's not over.
Yeah.
So I think the NL, like, I don't really know that I'll put it this way. For me personally, the only thing that I'm probably flipping is I think I had Philly in a wild card spot. I had Atlanta winning the division. At this point, the safer prediction is probably Philly winning the division. But other than that, I mean,
the
biggest surprises for me, Mike, and I think you're about to say it, it's Milwaukee.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was actually even going to ask you too, like, could we consider at this point, like, obviously we with what the Brewers are doing, I think neither one of us expected that. Another miss by us might be the Cubs. Like, the Cubs are 11.5 back. They're in last place in the NL Central right now. And the Brewers have a 6.5 game lead in that division. Like, I think we're kind of entering into territory of, like, if Milwaukee doesn't win that division, we'll be shocked. Like, I think that's kind of the territory we're entering into. I'm almost ready to consider the Cubs a miss on this one.
I mean
they're 39 and 46 at this point.
Yeah, they're third from the bottom in the NL right now.
Yeah.
They've been bad. I mean, the run differential's negative for them. I mean, like, I'll put it this way: like, we don't really have any evidence that they're better than the Nationals right now.
No, you're right.
I mean, the Nationals have a better record. The Nationals have a better run differential. I mean, the Giants have a better record and a better run differential.
Yeah.
Like, the Cubs are not. I don't know. I will say, like, if you ask me how that division shakes out, I think at this point Milwaukee's got to be the pick to win it. Yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Cubs are going to get hot at some point. The problem for the Cubs is, like, man, do they sell? Like,
right.
Because they might have to. And then obviously, we're getting, like, what's going to be really fascinating in the National League is we're getting to decision time for these teams.
Yeah.
And these teams have about 2 more weeks here to prove it. Because once you get to about the All-Star break, you know whether you're buying or selling. And that's where we're going to, like, some of these teams like the Cubs, the Reds, I think, are going to stand somewhat still no matter what, just because they're still young.
Yeah.
But, like, the Cubs, the Cardinals, like, those are teams with pieces to sell off. Those are also teams that, like, you could see buying if things, point the right way for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To answer your question, though, I'm not willing to say Milwaukee's a lock to win that division yet, just
Right.
because I'm not sold on this offense. Like, I'm just not. But I mean, I've been wrong about Milwaukee all year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we all have. Like, I think Milwaukee is. We all said from the beginning of this. I think you and I both had Milwaukee third or fourth in the division in the preseason. Like, we genuinely expected them to hit some serious regression. Like, no, they can't possibly, based on how much they sacrificed in this line on this roster. I mean, we even played the game that you made up, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago, on how many, like, can I name the top 12 players in Brewers WAR? And like, some of those guys, you're just like, who? Like, it doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. But yeah, no, I think, yeah, the Brewers definitely need to be considered the favorite. No, and I wouldn't consider them a lock, but like, I'm almost like, I'm at a point now where I'm like, all right, if the Brewers don't hang on, then I think I'm going to be like, well, like, because at this point I expect them to win. So now I'm going to be like, all right, if they don't win, I'll be like, wow, that's not what I expected to happen. I'd be a little bit surprised.
Like, at this point, if they don't win, would you call it a collapse?
Yeah, I think I would.
Interesting.
I think I would. I mean, you're probably towing the line there, but I think I would, because and a lot of that I think has to do with, like, when we look at the NL Central as a whole. Like, I don't think neither one of us look at any of those teams and are just like yeah, they're going to be world beaters. They're not, right? If the Brewers lose this division to the Pirates, like, I think we're going to say, all right, like, we all overhyped Milwaukee. They're a bust, right? I think that's kind of where we're at now, So, part of it is like, yeah, if Milwaukee doesn't win the division, like, yeah, it's a shock in their own right. But it's also like, who are you losing the division to? Are you losing it to the Cardinals, who nobody believes in? Or are you losing it to the Pirates, who nobody believes in? Like, the competition, if you lost it to the Phillies, that's different. But you're losing it to a team that is perceived, especially at this point in the season, to be like, okay, they're definitely worse than you.
No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because that's the one thing. Like, it's really hard to think of the Brewers as a divisional lock, because nobody looks at that roster and is like wowed by it, right? You look at that roster and you're like, yeah, it's an NL Central team. But then you think about it and you're like, well, okay, but you have to blow a 8.5 game lead over Pittsburgh now, a 10 game lead over Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm high on Pittsburgh, but geez, man, like that, yeah, it's a good point. Let's say Milwaukee doesn't win that division. Who wins it?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. The Cubs and the Reds both really have a lot of ground to make up. They're both 11 and 11.5 games back. I might say St. Louis. Like, I really might say St. Louis. I think I believe in them offensively more than anybody else in the division, really. Like, can they pitch? No. But Milwaukee and Pittsburgh, and especially Pittsburgh, is just as bad offensively as the Cardinals are defensively or pitching wise. Like, it just kind of depends on what you prefer. I'd probably say St. Louis, partly because they're 6.5 back, they're in second place, and because I almost kind of believed in them in the beginning of the season too. Like, I did not want to rule them out in the beginning of the season either.
No, you didn't, and I think that's the ultimate reason why we disagree here. Is I'm just not a believer in what the Cardinals are doing.
Yeah,
I think they're like
you never have been. You've been pretty steadfast on that.
They're an aging, fragile ball club.
Yeah,
that like can't pitch and really needs to stay healthy offensively to have any chance to succeed. Now, you could say the same thing about Pittsburgh in terms of, like, if their big rookie arms who are throwing 100 plus get hurt, like, then Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh again, for lack of a better way of saying it. But I think for me with Pittsburgh, I really want to believe, like, if Skeen stays healthy, does he finish top 5 in Cy Young? If Jared Jones stays healthy, does he finish top 15 in Cy Young? Like Mitch Keller, like I want to believe in that pitching staff.
I know.
And
It would be so fun to watch Paul Skeens in a playoff series, dude.
It'd be really fun to watch O'Neal Cruz in a playoff series too.
Right.
Like I just, and Brian Reynolds, I think he deserves some success.
I agree.
I want it for Pittsburgh, but I don't know that I believe in it for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Cincinnati to me is like a younger St. Louis, where like I actually think that offense has some really fun pieces.
Me too.
But there's not enough pitching depth at all. I think Cincinnati's destined to like kind of sit in the middle all year. I get it. They're 11.5 out. If you were to walk up to me from the future and say the Brewers are not winning the NL Central, I think I'd put some money down on the Cubs still.
That's really interesting.
I still think I just think that I just think as far as like the well-roundedness of the roster, I think there's the most potential there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I think that question is going to have, like you said before, that question is going to have a much clearer answer in 2 weeks.
100%.
Like if the Cubs offload Ian Happ, they offload Cody Bellinger, like they dump a bunch of those guys, then okay, they're done. Like unless like all of a sudden Pete Crow Armstrong becomes, Mike Trout in the next, half of the season, then I think they're out. You know what I mean? So, but it is interesting that you say that. So here's what you had, by the way. Dodger in the National League was Dodgers, Braves, Cubs, Phillies, Padres, Giants for you. You and I kind of sat in very similar positions in the National League. In the American League, I don't want to give you too much flack on this because I think, like I said, you and I are also very, very similar on this. You just replaced essentially the Rangers for me with the Blue Jays. Like you and I are kind of in similar position here. You had Astros, Blue Jays, Twins, Orioles, Yankees, Mariners. You had less faith in the Yankees than I did. You had more faith in the Blue Jays than I did. But look, it's tough for me to fault you for liking the Blue Jays because when you looked at the Blue Jays on paper, they were a pretty complete ball club. Like they are, and they kind of looked at it as just like, okay, Bichette, stud, Guerrero, stud, Springer has always been consistent, right? Like you're kind of looking at that. They had the pitching staff, Gausman, Barrios, Kikuchi, like you had guys there. And it just hasn't worked out. And we kind of talked about it before. I think they're big time sellers at the deadline too.
Yeah, the Blue Jays, I just didn't see Dalton Varsho batting 197. I didn't see Alejandro Kirk batting 200. I didn't see David Schneider batting 214. I didn't see Kevin Kiermaier being at 190. I didn't see Justin Turner being at 248. I didn't see George Springer being at 214.
George Springer was the lowest rated hitter in the American League until this weekend. He was awful this year.
It's just really ugly. Like it's an entire team offensively of underperforming players.
Yeah.
And what's disheartening about it, if you're a Blue Jays fan, is what the pitching staff has actually done. The pitching staff has been pretty good. Like seriously. Like Chris Bassett with a 3.24, Barrios with a 3.38, Kikuchi with a 4.18. I mean, Gaussman's been kind of the one who struggled and hasn't been what they expected him to be. But like the pitching staff's been okay. I mean, Yariel Rodriguez pitched great for them today.
Yeah.
But it's just they're not hitting. They're not hitting. The bullpen hasn't been consistent. The starters have been just okay. But I don't know. The Blue Jays to me are in that sweet spot of seller where it's like, I think they are in a unique position to like rebuild a team right now. Because these are all guys: Bassett, Barrios, Kikuchi, Gaussman. You could trade all four of them. They're all veterans. They're all guys that'll net you something, right? And then you look at the other side around. I mean, obviously we talked about Guerrero and Bichette. You're telling me a team won't take a shot at Justin Turner to play to DH for him, right? And get a little something out of that.
Right. Yeah.
You're telling me a team that wants a defense first center fielder won't take a shot at Kiermaier or Varsho.
Yep.
Team that's desperate for catching might go after Alejandro Kirk. Now they might want to hold on to some of these guys, right? I'm not saying or Danny Jansen. I'm not saying that they're going to shed all of these guys, but I mean, if they were to package some of these guys together and bait a team like the Padres or the Mariners to the table, like teams that like to overpay. Just saying, right?
You're right. I know.
So, I think this is a big make or break month for the Blue Jays in that sense. Who, by the way, I will gladly admit I was very wrong on the Blue Jays. I bought into this talent. I bought into them as a team that was in a good buy low spot that nobody was talking about. Mm-hmm. They're just not good. They're just not a good ball player.
They're not. But like I said, it's kind of tough to fault you for that because, here's the thing. People have been believing in the Blue Jays it wasn't even just this year. It was the past several years.
Yep.
Right? When they traded for Matt Chapman and everything, people were just okay, here we go. The Blue Jays are finally at that peak. They got Barrios. And I'm like, okay, they're starting to build something here. And it just never really amounted to anything. They could never really put it all together. I do think it's kind of funny how the most productive hitter in that lineup, maybe outside of Vladdy Jr., is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I do think that that's a little bit hysterical. He's hitting 300, which is, I think, kind of funny.
Yeah.
He was awful as a Yankee, and all he needed to do was get out of the Bronx for him to be successful. So enough of that. Let's talk about some awards quickly before we get into the hot corner. So MVPs, you and I both had different picks here. You and I had a different pick for every award except NL Rookie of the Year. NL Rookie of the Year, we were locked up with Yamamoto. We're going to get that wrong. I think we're both going to get AL Rookie of the Year wrong. I had Evan Carter. I don't even think he's in the conversation, even close to it, I should say. And you had Wyatt Langford, who is closer to the conversation, but I still don't think is I'll say I don't think it's likely. It's not impossible, but I don't think it's likely that he wins the award now. American League and National League Cy Young. My National League Cy Young is out of the question. I had Spencer Strider. He is out for the season. So I'm out on that. You had Tyler Glass now in the National League. That is still very much alive, my friend. That is still very, very much alive. I think both of our American League Cy Young picks are probably out of the question now also. Pablo Lopez for me, George Kirby for you.
I do love me some George Kirby.
Yeah.
I'm a George Kirby stan. I just love a guy that does absolutely nothing but throw strikes. I just as a former pitcher, I just respect the hell out of that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not in the conversation at this point.
No. And then MVP, I had Aaron Judge and Freddie Freeman. I think Aaron Judge I'm going to get right. Freddie Freeman, I am certain I'm going to get wrong. You had Yordan Alvarez and Bryce Harper. Now, Bryce Harper, I think, is possible. I do believe. I don't know that I buy Yordan Alvarez at this point. But again, this is just it. We're just kind of checking in on where we were. And, listen, so we get some wrong, we get some right. I don't think Yordan Alvarez was a bad pick by any means necessary. I think when you made the pick, I actually liked it a lot. I was surprised that the number wasn't better for him. What was Alvarez's number at the beginning of the year?
It was double digits. It was I think it was 11-1, which it should. I stand by that, right? I mean, that's not what it should be. I think looking back, I think we have a big enough sample size now on Aaron Judge that he should be the bet to win that award in the American League, moving forward, just period. Unless books are going to start giving out preseason odds that are minus 200 or something stupid, right? But if we get him before next season and he's 4-1, I'm just going to fire away on that. He just shouldn't. Yeah. If he stays healthy, he's the best hitter on the planet. Sure, like Otani can enter that conversation. Yordan Alvarez, I think, is capable of entering that conversation. Like, there are a couple guys who I think can kind of, raise their hand there, but Judge is the guy at this point.
Aaron Judge, just to give you an idea, May and June collectively, he's hitting about 400 for about 2 months.
Yeah,
like he's on a different planet right now. Like, he is what is keeping the Yankees afloat. Period.
yeah.
So I love him. I do. I love him. I legitimately love him.
You know what? I love him too because he's a Northern California kid who said, "Fuck that! I'm not going to San Francisco." So I love him for that. I also, I do have to eat a little bit more crow than you're making me eat. Okay. The Guardians.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, people who have listened to this show throughout this season, I don't know how many of you there really are, but if anybody has been listening to this show consistently throughout the season,
they know.
You heard me say a few times, talk to me on July 1st about the Cleveland Guardians. It's July 1st. The Cleveland Guardians are 52-30. Look, I think they have a bunch of guys right now who are just like performing way over their skis in terms of like the hitting for contact that they're doing. I do think that Stephen Kwan might just be another Luis Ariz, which is amazing.
He's so good, dude. He's so good.
But like, since when is Josh Naylor this guy?
Yeah, right.
Like, Jose Ramirez doing what he's doing is not surprising. He's awesome. But like, Josh Naylor is all of a sudden like, I mean, he's probably going to start at first base for the National League for the American League in the All-Star game, isn't he? I mean, He's been awesome. I don't really know how they're doing it on the pitching staff wise. Like, none of these guys are that awesome. I mean, like, Ben Lively has been dominant. Ben Lively, like, what,
Yeah, right.
They're doing all this without Bieber, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, they are.
So I'll say this, like, I'm not bought in on the talent in Cleveland, but they have my attention. Like, it's July 1st. You're 22 games over 500. You've built a 6-game lead in the division over Minnesota. You're plus 98 in run differential. So it's legitimate, right? It's a good ball club.
I think next week we should play a game of, just like we did with the Brewers, we should play a game of who leads the Guardians in WAR and see what because it can't be that different. Like, their roster's terrible, but they're still good.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are some names on there that will definitely surprise people.
Oh, I'm sorry. When we pull up and we see Tyler Freeman on that list, I'm telling you, we're going to be like, what the hell's going on here? Oh,
yeah,
man.
That kid Schneeman, who's come over
Schneeman. Yeah. That is the name that can unequivocally just like summarize the Guardian season, is because they're getting Schneeman to be productive.
And while I'm sitting here wearing a Guardians hat that you didn't comment on, I got it in Cleveland about a week and a half ago. I went to Cleveland. I had some fantasy football commissioner duties I had to tend to. But I was in Northeast Ohio, and so my friend and I went and checked out a Guardians Blue Jays game up there. And the stadium is okay, right? Like, it's the 25th one I've been to. It's nice. Like, it's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing spectacular about it. Like, it's fine. Mm-hmm. But I gotta hand it to them, man. Like, it was 97 degrees and humid and awful out, and that place was sold out, and not just sold out, but it was sold out and engaged with the game. Yeah, like, that was a great baseball environment. They were into it. So good for Guardians fans. First time all year, I'm going to give you all a little bit of respect. I promised you I would on July 1st. Twins are still going to win the division.
I think that deserves a round of applause there, Dalton Brown. You came through on it. I'm proud of you. That was legit right there. I can give you, and Cleveland's a great sports city. I've been there a few times. It really is a great sports city. I'm a massive, you can see it right behind me right here. I'm a massive Cleveland Cavalier fan for no other reason that when I started watching basketball, I was a massive LeBron fan. And then when he left, I just stuck with it. But they are a phenomenal sports city just from the passion that they get from their fan. I mean, the Browns have been terrible for how long now? And they are still, all about brownies. It's unbelievable.